For 8 years, Clara Whitmore wore the same silver promise bracelet. It had never been replaced by an engagement ring. Every time someone asked when the wedding would be, Alpha Nathan Hale always smiled and offered another reason to wait. After the harvest, after the border war, after the council election, next winter, there was always another season, another promise, another reason why today wasn't the right day. Yet Clara believed him every single time. She loved Nathan long before he became Alpha. She stood beside him when his father died unexpectedly. She comforted grieving families after rogue wolf attacks. She organized food deliveries during harsh winters when the pack stores ran low. When rival families threatened civil conflict, she spent countless nights negotiating peace before blood was spilled. The Hale pack flourished. Most believed Nathan's leadership had transformed the territory. Few realized the woman quietly working behind him had carried half the burden. Now, the Grand Alpha Summit had arrived. Every neighboring Alpha gathered inside the Moonstone Hall. Silver banners hung from towering pillars. Crystal lanterns reflected across polished marble floors. The air buzzed with excitement. Everyone expected the same thing. Tonight, after 8 years, Nathan Hale would finally ask Clara to become his Luna. Even Clara allowed herself to hope. She wore a simple blue gown instead of royal silk. Around her wrist rested the familiar silver bracelet. Its tiny moon charm had grown smooth from years of absent-minded touches whenever she missed Nathan. Her closest friend squeezed her hand. "He wouldn't make you wait this long if he didn't love you." Clara smiled softly. "I know." At least, she wanted to believe she did. Trumpets echoed through the hall. Nathan climbed the ceremonial platform. The crowd erupted into applause. Clara's heart raced. This was it. The moment she had imagined through 8 birthdays, 8 moon festivals, 8 years of believing tomorrow would finally become today. Nathan looked across the gathering. For one brief moment, their eyes met. Then he cleared his throat. "I've made a difficult decision." The hall became silent. "My pack needs a stronger political alliance. I can't marry for love." Every word landed like falling stone. "Our relationship ends today. I hope you'll understand." 8 years ended in 12 words. No one spoke. Several nobles exchanged approving nods. Others applauded what they called a wise decision for the future of the pack. Clara heard none of it. The world around her had become strangely quiet. She looked down at the bracelet resting against her wrist. Slowly, she unclasped it. She walked towards the platform. Nathan finally looked at her. For a heartbeat, something resembling regret crossed his face. It disappeared almost instantly. Without anger, without pleading, without raising her voice, Clara placed the silver bracelet into his hand. "I've already given you 8 years. She took one slow step backwards. "I'm not giving you another day." Those were the only words she spoke. Then she turned. Her head remained high. Her shoulders never trembled. She refused to let anyone see the tears gathering in her eyes. The crowd parted silently as she walked through the great doors of the hall. No one followed her. High above the ceremony, on the royal balcony reserved for visiting rulers, one man had watched everything unfold. Alpha King Lucian Draven, the warrior every Alpha feared. He had traveled to the summit to discuss military treaties and growing unrest across the kingdoms. Instead, he found himself watching a woman walk away with nothing except her dignity. His sharp silver eyes followed Clara until she disappeared beyond the palace gates. Something about her stayed with him, not because she had been rejected, but because, after losing everything, she had waited 8 years to receive. She had refused to lose herself. For the first time that evening, the feared Alpha King looked away from politics and towards the woman everyone else had been foolish enough to overlook. The Grand Alpha Summit continued long after Clara left. Music echoed through the Moonstone Hall. Goblets were raised. The noble families congratulated Alpha Nathan Hale on making what they called a wise political decision. Nathan accepted their praise with a forced smile. Yet, for reasons he could not explain, the silver promise bracelet still felt unusually heavy in his hand. Far above the celebration, Alpha King Lucian Draven remained on the royal balcony. His beta, Rowan Blackwood, stepped beside him. "You've hardly spoken all evening, Your Majesty." Lucian's gaze rested on the palace gates, where Clara had disappeared. "I've seen enough." Rowan frowned. "You came to discuss military treaties." "I did, but I found something far more important." They walked into a private council chamber, deep within the palace. A stack of leather-bound intelligence reports already waited on the table. Lucian opened the first folder. Every page carried the same name: Clara Whitmore. Rowan watched as his king turned the pages one after another. "Report 21, Lucian said quietly. "Winter famine." Rowan read aloud. "Food shortages resolved within 12 days after Miss Whitmore organized emergency grain distribution." Lucian opened another. "Report 34. Long-standing feud between the Eastbrook and Ashvale families peacefully settled through Miss Whitmore's mediation." Another report. "Widows of fallen warriors received anonymous financial support traced to Miss Whitmore." Another. "Village school rebuilt after fire using private donations arranged by Miss Whitmore." Rowan slowly looked up. "Every report mentions her." Lucian nodded. "And every official announcement credited Nathan Hale." Silence settled over the room. For nearly a year, Lucian's spies had investigated corruption spreading across neighboring packs. Again and again, one truth emerged. Whenever the Hale pack prospered, Clara stood somewhere behind the success, not seeking recognition, not demanding praise, simply solving problems before they became disasters. Rowan leaned against the table. So Nathan built his reputation on work that wasn't entirely his. Lucian closed the final report. He had someone extraordinary standing beside him, and he never realized it. For a long moment, neither man spoke. Finally, Rowan asked the question, lingering in his mind. "What do you intend to do?" Lucian walked towards the window, overlooking the moonlit courtyard. "Invite Miss Whitmore to the capital." Rowan raised an eyebrow. "As an advisor?" Lucian smiled faintly. "No. As someone whose value should have been recognized long ago." Elsewhere, Clara rode quietly inside a modest carriage heading towards the royal capital. She had accepted Lucian's invitation, not because she sought another alpha. She simply needed somewhere to begin again. The silver bracelet was gone. Her wrist felt strangely light. Pain still lingered inside her heart. But beneath it, something else had begun to grow. Freedom. The forest road stretched peacefully beneath the stars, until the horses suddenly screamed. The carriage lurched violently. An arrow buried itself into the wooden door. Another shattered the lantern hanging beside the driver's seat. Masked wolves burst from the trees. Steel flashed beneath the moonlight. "Kill her!" one shouted. "Leave no witnesses!" Before the attackers could reach the carriage, a thunderous howl rolled through the forest. Royal wolves wearing the crest of Alpha King Lucian charged from the darkness. The battle erupted in an instant. Clara gripped the carriage door, her heart pounding. She had escaped one betrayal. Now someone wanted to make sure she never reached the capital alive. Steel clashed beneath the moonlit trees. The royal guards moved with ruthless precision. Within moments, the masked attackers lay defeated across the forest road. Only one remained alive. He struggled against the grip of two lichen-trained warriors, his wrists bound behind his back with silver chains. Clara slowly stepped down from the damaged carriage. Her hands still trembled. One of the guards approached her. "Are you hurt, Miss Whitmore?" She shook her head. "No." "My driver? He'll recover." Relief washed over her. She had barely caught her breath when Alpha King Lucian rode into the clearing. His black stallion stopped beside the shattered carriage. Lucian dismounted immediately. His sharp silver eyes searched Clara for injuries before settling on the captured assassin. What happened? The ambush failed, Your Majesty, his captain reported. We captured their leader alive. Lucian walked toward the prisoner. His voice remained calm. Who hired you? The assassin stared at the ground. I won't speak. Lucian folded his arms. You've already failed your employers. They won't protect you now. Still, the man remained silent. One of the royal investigators opened a leather satchel and removed several sealed documents found on the assassin's body. They carried payment orders, signed with the marks of 3 noble families. Lucian frowned. The Ashcroft, the Thorns, the Blackridge Council. Clara recognized every name. They're Nathan's closest political supporters. The assassin's expression changed. Just for a moment. It was enough, Lucian noticed. So the Hale Pack is involved. They don't know everything, the assassin blurted, before he could stop himself. The clearing fell silent. Lucian stepped closer. Everything about what? The man swallowed hard. You think this was about a broken engagement? It wasn't. Then tell me what it was about. The assassin laughed bitterly. She was never supposed to leave alive. Clara felt a chill run through her. Why? Because she carries something the kingdoms can never be allowed to discover. Lucian exchanged a glance with his royal investigator. What does she carry? The Moon Crown bloodline. Even the wind seemed to stop. Clara frowned. I've never heard those words before. The investigator carefully unrolled one of the recovered parchments. Ancient family records covered the faded pages. A silver crest appeared at the top. His face grew pale. Your Majesty, I believe he's telling the truth. He pointed to several names written in elegant script. Miss Whitmore's grandmother changed the family name nearly 60 years ago. She erased every connection to the original royal line. Lucian looked at Clara. Your ancestors ruled before the kingdoms divided. The Moon Crown bloodline was believed extinct. The investigator nodded. If Clara married a powerful alpha, her bloodline would give legal legitimacy to unite several kingdoms under one crown. Clara struggled to absorb the words. I've spent my entire life believing I was ordinary. You were meant to, Lucian replied gently. It kept you alive. The assassin lowered his head. The nobles discovered the truth first. They paid Nathan to end the relationship before anyone else learned who she really was. Clara closed her eyes. 8 years. 8 years of waiting. 8 years of believing love had simply faded. Now she understood. Someone had been pulling invisible strings all along. Nathan had broken her heart. But others had carefully arranged the moment it would happen. Lucian watched the pain cross her face. His wolf stirred with quiet resolve. Whether Clara ever accepted his friendship or not, whether she ever trusted another alpha again or not, one promise settled firmly inside his heart. No one would ever use her as a pawn again. The royal capital stood behind towering black stone walls. Silver banners bearing the crest of Alpha King Lucian Draven fluttered above the gates. As Clara's carriage rolled through the city, she looked out the window in quiet amazement. The streets were alive. Merchants traded openly. Children laughed as they chased one another through the market square. Builders repaired homes instead of fortifying walls. It did not feel like the kingdom ruled by the alpha every ruler feared. It felt peaceful. Lucian waited at the entrance to the royal palace. He wore a simple dark coat instead of ceremonial armor. When Clara stepped from the carriage, he inclined his head respectfully. Miss Whitmore, she returned the gesture. Your Majesty, I hope the journey after the attack wasn't too difficult. It was easier knowing your guards were nearby. A faint smile crossed Lucian's face. I'm glad. Instead of leading her into the throne room, he escorted her to a spacious council chamber. A large round table occupied the center. Maps, village reports, crop records, and construction plans covered its surface. Lucien pulled out a chair for her. "I'd like to offer you a position." Clara remained standing. "What position?" "Head of the Royal Restoration Council." She blinked in surprise. "You barely know me." "I know enough. I've read nearly a year of reports about the work you've done. You rebuilt villages without asking for recognition. You fed families without seeking praise. You solved problems others ignored." He met her eyes. "I need someone who tells me the truth, not someone who tells me what I want to hear." Clara was silent for a long moment. Then she drew a slow breath. "I have one condition." Lucien nodded. "I'm listening. I won't replace one alpha with another. I won't become anyone's consolation prize. I won't accept this position because you pity me. If I stay, it will be because my work matters." Lucien answered without hesitation. "Good." She looked surprised. He continued, "I've never admired people who settle for being second. I didn't invite you because another man failed to recognize your worth. I invited you because I already did." For the first time since leaving the Hail Pack, Clara felt something inside her begin to heal. Over the following weeks, they worked side by side. Every morning began with council meetings. Every afternoon was spent visiting villages damaged by years of neglect. One day, Lucien approved an expensive project to build a new military outpost. The council quickly agreed. Everyone except Clara. She quietly spread a map across the table. "If we build here, 3 farming communities will lose their water supply." One advisor scoffed. "The king has already decided." Lucien looked at Clara. "What would you do instead?" She traced another route along the northern hills. "Strengthen the old watchtowers. They already overlook the border. We protect the kingdom without hurting the people we're protecting." The room fell silent. The royal engineer studied her proposal carefully. After several minutes, he nodded. "She's right." Lucien rolled up the first map. "Then we'll change the plan. No pride, no anger, just the better decision." That evening, as they stood overlooking the city from the palace balcony, Clara smiled to herself. For 8 years, she had waited for one man to decide whether she was enough. Now she worked beside a king who had never asked her to prove it. For the first time in years, she wasn't waiting to be chosen. She was already valued. Nathan Hale stopped sleeping. Every night, the same memories returned. Clara standing beside him during council meetings. Clara calming frightened villagers after floods. Clara staying awake through the night beside injured warriors. For years, he had accepted everyone's praise without asking himself a simple question: who had truly earned it? The answer haunted him now. Royal investigators continued exposing the conspiracy that had spread through the neighboring packs. Every new confession tightened the knot of regret inside Nathan's chest. The nobles admitted they had bribed advisors, intercepted messages, manipulated council votes. Whenever Clara suggested reforms, they dismissed her ideas before they ever reached Nathan. Whenever she wrote him letters during his diplomatic journeys, they quietly burned them. One elderly advisor finally broke down during questioning. "We knew she would never fight for recognition, so we let everyone believe the successes belonged to you." Nathan closed his eyes. "You stole her voice." The advisor lowered his head. "No, you allowed us to." Those words hurt more than anything else, because they were true. Weeks later, Nathan traveled to the royal capital beneath a white flag of peace. He came alone, no guards, no counselors, no nobles eager to flatter him. For the first time since becoming Alpha, he walked without anyone clearing a path ahead of him. The capital surprised him. Workers rebuilt old bridges. Markets overflowed with food. Children laughed openly in the streets. Everywhere he went, people spoke about one person. Lady Clara organized the new school. Lady Clara helped my family after the fire. Lady Clara convinced the king to rebuild our farms before expanding the palace. No one called her Nathan's former Luna. The people had given her another name, the Queen Without a Crown. Nathan found her in the Royal Restoration Gardens. She knelt beside a group of children planting young oak trees. When she noticed him, she smiled politely and dismissed the children for the afternoon. For a long moment, neither spoke. Finally, Nathan broke the silence. "I made the biggest mistake of my life." Clara looked at him calmly. "No." He frowned. She continued gently. "You made hundreds of small choices. The biggest mistake wasn't ending our relationship. It was making me believe I should keep waiting." Nathan lowered his eyes. "I thought there would always be more time." "I know. I thought once everything settled, there was always another harvest." She finished the sentence for him. "Another war, another election, another winter." His shoulders sagged. "I kept asking you to wait for the life we were supposed to build." She nodded. "And eventually, I realized, if someone truly wants a future with you, they don't keep postponing it forever." Nathan looked at her with tears in his eyes. "I never stopped loving you." Clara's expression remained kind. "I believe you, but love isn't measured by how long someone says they'll choose you. It's measured by whether they actually do." The words left no room for argument, only understanding. Footsteps approached across the garden. Lucien carried several council reports beneath one arm. When he saw Clara, his face relaxed into an effortless smile. "I've been looking for you." She smiled back. "We've finished here." Nathan watched the exchange quietly. There was no performance, no attempt to make him jealous, only the quiet ease of two people who respected one another completely. As Clara walked away beside Lucien, Nathan remained beneath the young oak trees. He finally understood that the greatest loss of his life was never the woman who had left. It was every opportunity he had wasted while believing she would always stay. The summons reached every kingdom within a week. The Grand Council of Kings would convene at the royal palace. Every alpha, every ruler, every elder. Attendance was mandatory. Rumors spread faster than the royal messengers. Some believed Alpha King Lucien Draven planned to announce a military alliance. Others expected new laws after the conspiracy had been exposed. No one guessed the truth. The great council hall glittered beneath thousands of crystal lanterns. Banners from every werewolf kingdom hung side by side. The largest throne stood at the far end of the chamber. Yet when Lucien entered, he walked past it without a glance. Nathan Hale stood among the invited alphas. He watched silently as nobles filled the galleries. His eyes searched the room until they found Clara. She wore a gown of deep blue embroidered with silver thread. No crown rested upon her head. She did not need one. The respect in every face around her spoke louder than jewels ever could. The master of ceremonies raised his staff. His Majesty, Alpha King Lucien Draven. The hall fell completely silent. Lucien stepped into the center of the chamber. His voice carried calmly through the vast room. Today is not about treaties. It is not about territory. It is about recognizing what should have been recognized long ago. He turned away from the assembled rulers and walked directly toward Clara. Whispers spread through the hall. She looked at him in quiet surprise. When he stopped before her, he reached into his coat. From a small velvet box, he lifted a ring, crafted from polished silver moonstone. Its surface shimmered beneath the lantern light. A single collective breath swept through the chamber. Then something happened that no one present had ever witnessed. The Alpha King every ruler feared dropped to one knee. Shock rippled through the gathering. Several nobles stared in disbelief. Nathan felt his heart pound against his ribs. Lucien looked only at Clara. "I know another man asked you to wait." His voice remained gentle. "I won't." He held out the ring. "I'm asking today." His silver eyes never left hers. "But understand this. If your answer is no, I will still spend the rest of my life respecting the remarkable woman you are. You owe me nothing. not your gratitude, not your affection, and certainly not your future. You deserve the freedom to choose it yourself. The silence inside the hall became almost sacred. Clara looked at the ring, then at the man kneeling before her. For 8 years, she had imagined what a proposal might feel like. She had imagined excitement, relief, joy. She had never imagined feeling peaceful. There were no conditions attached to Lucien's question, no promises of someday, no request for more patience. Only honesty, only certainty, only respect. Tears gathered in her eyes. Around them, every ruler waited without speaking. Even Nathan understood this moment no longer belonged to him. Clara drew a slow breath. She realized something that made her heart ache in the sweetest way. This was the first time anyone had truly asked her to share a future. Not after another season, not after another war, not after another excuse. Today, here, now. And for the first time in 8 long years, she didn't feel like a woman hoping to be chosen. She felt like a woman who had finally been given the freedom to choose. The great council hall remained silent. Hundreds of rulers, thousands of witnesses. Not one dared interrupt the moment unfolding before them. Alpha King Lucien Draven still knelt before Clara. The silver moonstone ring rested in his open hand. He did not rush her. He did not repeat his question. He simply waited, not because he expected her answer, but because he respected her right to choose it. Clara looked down at the ring. For a heartbeat, the hall disappeared. She was 20 years old again, standing beneath the moon festival lanterns, while Nathan fastened a simple silver bracelet around her wrist. Next year, he had whispered, I'll replace this with a real ring. Next year became another, then another. 8 birthdays, 8 harvests, 8 winters. She remembered every celebration where someone asked when the wedding would be, every smile she forced, every excuse she repeated on Nathan's behalf. He just needs a little more time. Now she understood. Love should never require someone to spend years convincing themselves that tomorrow would finally become today. A single tear slipped down her cheek. Lucien's expression softened. If you're uncertain, he said quietly, take all the time you need. She smiled through her tears. You still don't understand. A flicker of concern crossed his face. She stepped closer. I've already spent 8 years waiting. She reached toward the ring. The entire hall held its breath. Instead of extending her hand for Lucien to place it on her finger, she gently took the ring from his palm. Lucien looked at her in surprise. Clara turned the moonstone slowly between her fingers. Then, with calm certainty, she slipped it onto her own hand. The silver stone caught the light. A joyful murmur swept through the hall. She looked into Lucien's eyes. I choose you. Her voice was steady. Not because you wear a crown. Not because you're the strongest alpha alive. She smiled. I choose you because you never asked me to earn a place beside you. You recognized my worth before asking for my heart. Lucien slowly rose to his feet. Emotion shone openly in his silver eyes. He gently took her hand. This ring isn't a reward. It never was. It's a promise. That you'll never have to wonder where you stand with me. Clara laughed softly through happy tears. Then let me make you a promise too. She squeezed his hand. I'll never mistake waiting for love again. Lucien leaned forward and kissed her forehead. Not as a display of triumph. Not to celebrate winning what another man had lost, but as a quiet promise that her heart would always be safe with him. The hall erupted into applause. Kings rose from their seats. Queens smiled through tears. Even the proudest nobles stood in respect. Nathan remained where he was. He watched Clara's smile. It was brighter than any smile she had worn during the 8 years they had been together. And he understood why. She wasn't smiling because she had received a ring. She was smiling because someone had finally given her certainty instead of excuses. Without a word, Nathan turned and walked towards the great doors. No one stopped him, no one mocked him. His punishment was not humiliation. It was the knowledge that the greatest love of his life had walked away only after he spent years teaching her to wait. As the doors closed behind him, Lucian and Clara stood together beneath the light of the moon goddess. For the first time in many years, neither of them was waiting for tomorrow. They had chosen each other, today. 5 years passed. The moonstone ring never left Clara's hand, not because she feared losing it, but because every time she looked at it, she remembered the promise behind it. Not someday, not eventually. Today, the kingdoms changed in ways no one had imagined. The old border checkpoints disappeared. Roads once guarded by soldiers became busy trade routes. Villages that had struggled for generations flourished under the Royal Restoration Council. Lucian and Clara ruled together, not from separate thrones, but from the same round council table where every voice mattered. Generals sat beside teachers, farmers advised ministers, healers debated with scholars. Lucian often reminded the council of one simple truth: the strongest kingdom listens before it commands. No one questioned where he had learned that lesson. Clara still traveled constantly. She refused to become a queen hidden behind palace walls. Each month, she visited remote villages with only a small escort. She inspected schools. She helped rebuild homes after storms. She sat with grieving families long after official ceremonies had ended. To children, she was simply Queen Clara. To the elderly, she was the woman who always remembered their names. One spring morning, she visited a new academy built where an abandoned military camp had once stood. A class of young girls surrounded her with excited smiles. One finally gathered enough courage to ask a question. "Your Majesty." Clara smiled warmly. "Yes?" The girl glanced nervously at the moonstone ring. "Is it true you waited 8 years for another alpha to marry you?" The classroom became quiet. The teachers looked uncomfortable. Clara gently knelt so she was eye level with the child. "It is true." The girl frowned. "Weren't you angry?" Clara thought for a moment. "I was sad, but sadness taught me something important." "What?" She rested a gentle hand on the girl's shoulder. "Never stay where your future is always being postponed." The children listened carefully. "If someone truly values you," Clara continued, "they won't spend years making you wonder whether you're enough. They'll make their choice, and they'll make it clear." The teacher quietly wiped away a tear. Those words spread far beyond the academy. Young women repeated them to one another. Parents taught them to their daughters. Young alphas studied them before taking leadership vows. Clara became more than a beloved queen. She became a symbol of self-respect. People stopped calling her the woman who waited 8 years. Instead, throughout every kingdom, she became known by another name: the queen who never waited again. That evening, Clara stood on the palace balcony, watching the sunset paint the city in gold. Lucian joined her quietly. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. She smiled. "The day I walked away from the summit. The day everything fell apart?" She shook her head. "No. The day everything finally began." Lucian slipped his hand into hers. Their rings caught the fading sunlight. Clara realized something that filled her heart with peace. Walking away after 8 years had never been the end of her story. It had simply been the first brave step towards the life she had deserved all along. And from the moment she stopped waiting, she had never looked back. Many years passed. Peace was no longer a fragile dream. It had become the way the kingdoms lived. The children who had grown up during Lucian and Clara's reign knew nothing of endless border wars. They knew shared harvest festivals, open trade, schools where young wolves from every pack studied together. Each year, newly appointed alphas traveled to the royal hall. Before receiving their seals of leadership, they studied the history of the kingdoms. There was one gallery every future ruler was required to visit. It contained no crowns, no swords, no battle trophies. Only two simple objects displayed beneath crystal glass. The first was a faded silver promise bracelet. Its tiny moon charm had lost its shine after years of being worn. The second was a silver moonstone engagement ring. Its polished stone still reflected the light as brightly as the day Lucian had offered it. A group of children stood before the display. One little boy looked up at the elderly Queen Clara. "Your Majesty?" She smiled warmly. "Yes? Why did you keep both?" The gallery became quiet. Clara stepped closer to the display. She gently rested her fingertips against the glass above the old bracelet. "This one reminds me never to confuse waiting with love." She turned towards the moonstone ring. "And this one reminds me that real love doesn't keep you waiting forever." The children listened carefully. One little girl frowned thoughtfully. "So, the bracelet wasn't a bad thing?" Clara smiled. "No. It taught me an important lesson. Sometimes the hardest endings prepare us for the happiest beginnings." The children nodded. Nearby stood another marble plaque. Every future alpha stopped before it before leaving the gallery. The words had been engraved by Alpha King Lucian himself. "The strongest rulers do not make worthy people prove their value." Beneath it appeared a second inscription. "They recognize it before the rest of the world does." Those words became part of every leadership oath across the United Kingdoms. Later that afternoon, the gallery emptied. Only Clara and Lucian remained. Neither wore ceremonial robes anymore. Simple traveling clothes suited them far better. Lucian looked at the display and chuckled softly. "It's strange." "What is?" Clara asked. "History remembers a bracelet and a ring more than any crown we've ever worn." Clara laughed gently. "Perhaps because people remember hope more than power." Lucian reached for her hand. The moonstone ring still rested upon her finger, just where she had placed it herself all those years ago. "If I had to do it all again," he said quietly, "I'd still kneel." Clara looked into his eyes. "And I'd still choose you." Outside the palace windows, children laughed as they crossed the gardens. Young alphas trained beside future healers. Farmers shared meals with nobles. The kingdoms flourished because their rulers had built them upon respect instead of fear. History remembered the woman who waited 8 years for one alpha's promise. But that was never the ending people celebrated. They celebrated the day she stopped waiting, the day she chose herself, and then freely chose the king who had recognized her worth long before the rest of the world finally saw it. Because the greatest love stories were never about waiting to be chosen. They were about finding the courage to choose the life and the person that chose you back.